Today's update is one that's going to ruffle quite a few feathers. So, if this site offends you, I strongly advise you find another video series to watch, because quite frankly, this is the only viable option for this car at this point. However, if you're like me and you have no problem with that, then pardon the mess of my garage, sit back, enjoy a cup of tea, or coffee, or whatever beverage you like, and settle in because we're going to discuss something interesting today. Prior to me going out and getting what I need to connect this fuel return line and the fuel filter so that way I can use my modified low pressure setup on the stock pump. You will most likely use the inertia switch as a failsafe and a bypass so that way the power is not going to the pump. But as you can tell from the early shots of this manifold, which is a Peugeot model, I have once again converted another DeLorean to Carburetor. For those of you who say, oh, it's horrible that you're destroying the originality, I'd like to show you a few things that were here before I got the car. This is where there was a snake oil box from the Nology wire kit. Houston sells those and they purport them to have power gains. In reality, all these plugs and wires do is cause spark issues and other problems. It's got a gift from a friend of mine, a stainless steel coolant tank. But let's move on to some of the bigger areas. You can see here on the doors, this is painted black. When the car was painted red, faint traces you can see there still, they decided to paint the door jambs black. To bring this car back to original, the entire door assembly would need to be taken, cleaned, prepped, and stripped. I've also, as you can see now from the top down, had the front frame section replaced. It is a thicker gauge steel than was stock. My fuel filler neck is an upgraded unit that uses a modern threaded gas cap and is made of stainless steel. However, I was able to preserve and save most of the original paint on the front fascia. There's the old argument you'll hear for any car that they're only original once. Well, that's true, but there's also a difference between original and preservable. If I were to do this car correctly, being a black interior low-vin car, I would have to source a gas flap hood, which I'm not a fan of, replace the windshield with one with an antenna. This is an aftermarket replacement that Houston used to sell a few years back. Clean all of the black paint off of the door jambs, disassemble every component to remove every trace of paint, have to find a correct thin gauge front frame replacement and go through that again when the aftermarket one is now stock, get the correct carpeting and seats, the correct dark wheels. I do have over on my shelf the early style coolant pipes for this particular car, so that wouldn't be unobtainable. But I would also then have to go back to the plastic expansion tank, try to find a fascia with original paint. Because no matter what, even if I sourced those parts, it would never be original. It would only be correct. This car here, my 66 LeBaron, this car is original. This sheen you see is the factory black paint. Underneath my insurance information here, you see the factory seats with the Imperial Eagle pattern. Most of the discoloration you see is only a result of the phone light. The seats, aside from some damage there, are in great shape. This car is all original. I have preserved that and I sporadically drive it. This one, however, I have removed the components for the Bosch K-Jetronic fuel injection system. Many of these parts, throttle spools, distributor, butterfly assembly, and pipes, are difficult, if not impossible, to find. Let's take a look at this little one down here. This brass piece, that is the thermotime switch. No, it's not some lame movie pun. What it does is, based off of the temperature that it reads, it determines where to set the fuel injection system. If you want to find an original, $594. If you want to get your warm-up regulator, this little component here, rebuilt, the cost of a replacement one is $386 for just the rebuilt unit. You still have to send them yours. You don't have a spare with that. This is the kit to rebuild the fuel distributor. Or if you don't trust yourself, which is part of why mine had an issue with it running way too rich, this is what it costs you to have a fuel distributor rebuilt. You add them all together, you're looking at, just for the warm-up regulator, fuel distributor, and a thermotime switch, $1,650. If you need new stainless fuel lines, and these are the cheapest ones that you could trust. Personally, I'd go with the offering from DeLorean Industries if I were running stock fuel lines. But you're looking at $2,700 to $2,800 in just fuel lines and rebuild components for an aging K-Jet system. Now, with the warm-up regulator, there are bypasses. Dave McKean sells a wonderful relay that essentially makes it obsolete. But these parts are getting difficult, if not impossible, to find. The original Bosch distributor caps, no longer available. The aftermarket ones are not a quality replacement. So, why would I go carburetor with this? These manifolds can be had for around $500. The lion's share of the cost of this conversion will be adapting the manifold itself, plugging up the spots like down here and in the back where there would be vacuum leaks, block off plate here or something there. I've actually got a different one that's ready to run on order and will be arriving shortly. This is just a test fit to show how it will sit in the car and to keep the engine covered and closed off while I wait on the other one to arrive. I like to keep busy, and doing little things is always satisfying. But that is what is in the future for this car, because there is no other way to, well, there's no possible way with this one to make it original. It is too far gone. It will never be an original unrestored car. The only way to do that is to find an original owner or a second owner car that hasn't been touched, botched, or cobbled. Spend the money, and you will be spending for it, and buy it. Otherwise, you can get something like this, where, aside from the fuel system being different, it is still, at its heart, a DeLorean. You will still have as much fun driving it. It'll still be a delightful car. And I intend to drive it. So my emphasis is on practicality. And that is exactly what this car is going to be. I don't care if it's got a few cross-grain scratches, a couple little dents and dings. That just means I'm not going to be afraid to park it. I will drive this car and I will have fun with it. That's what I wanted it for. That's why I own it. The day this stops being a fun, enjoyable project is the day I sell it and every other classic car I own.